delighted to be here with you as well. I am wearing blue and yellow today for a reason. I don't have a pen, and this is the closest thing I could do today. And I don't know about you, but I have been waking up just about every day for the last 7 days or so and checking to see if there is still a country that has its sovereignty. This has been a really devastating thing for a lot of people, millions and millions of people in the country of Ukraine. And our hearts are breaking. I know yours is, regarding what's happening. Sometimes I just feel completely overwhelmed with the things that I read, as I'm sure you do as well, and sometimes even just feel the need to take a little bit of a break because I can read, but there's only so much that we can do. But today, we are gathered here in a space where we have freedom. We don't hear bombs going off, no gunshots. We have electricity and water. We woke up in our homes today without fear of bombing. And all of these things we just take for granted because that's just the life we live. And it's the life that they lived until just about a week and a half ago. You probably have friends that are originally from Ukraine or know people that are. Our church rents to another church that meets on Sundays, and it is largely a Ukrainian group. And I've spoken with one of the members of that church and let them know that many of us are in prayer over this event and will continue to be, and they wanted to make sure that I was able to communicate to those of you that are praying for their countrymen and the situation there, how much that means to them. And so I wanted to express that to you as well today. Some of you are wondering, how can we help? And there are many ways that you can help. ADRA is on the ground right now, and they are actively engaged in the humanitarian efforts that are going on there. You will find on ADRA's ADRA.org online, you will find a link there specifically to be able to give to a fund related to the crisis in Ukraine. There are children's organizations that specifically work with children that are also on the ground. And I can send an email out with a few of those different opportunities. Some of you may even be getting letters, as I have, from folks that are members of the church there that say, just deposit some money into our bank account because we're handing things out to people as much as we can. But if you're feeling very comfortable with working with humanitarian organizations that have been around for a while, there are plenty of them, both with Seventh-day Adventist affiliation as well as those that do not, because everyone right now is just trying to preserve life and help people survive. Before we begin today, I want to invite you, I know we have already mentioned this in our prayers, but I want to invite us as a church to specifically lift up this country and the people who are suffering both inside and those who are now in other countries suffering because they still have loved ones who weren't able to get out. So if you join me, as together we lift them up in prayer. Father, our hearts are breaking. We've seen the pictures and the fear in people's eyes, and the sadness and the terror. And we think of an entire country of people, millions and millions of them, who are suffering at this very moment in time and who have been. And God, today, we are not asking that you would begin to work in that country because we are grateful that you are already there and at work, and you were there before this started. But God, we are joining together as a united group of people, asking you to intervene in the ways that only you can. We're asking that you would preserve life. We're asking for leadership that is making decisions to harm innocent people, that their hearts would be moved to change. We're asking that people would realize the futility of trying to dominate another country, and they would go back home to be with their families so that their lives could be spared as well. We think of the mothers who've just given birth and who are in basements, in hospitals with very little care and supplies, who are concerned about their children. We think of wives and children who are separated from their husbands, who are now in other countries and don't know if they will see them again. God, we ask that you would draw near and that you would comfort them. Thank you for what you're already doing. And we trust all of this in your hands. In Christ's name, amen. Have you ever woke up and realized that the world was different? We have awakened a week and a half ago, at least for those of us in the Western world, to a world that is not the same. And while we have no idea how far this will go and the full ramifications of what is currently happening, I think it's pretty safe to say that the world has changed. And we don't know if it will be back to some semblance of normal during our lifetimes. And when things like this happen, even though they may seem a little far away, they're happening right on the borders of the Western world. And we know people who are affected. And when things like this happen, for many of us, it can make us feel a sense of uncertainty. A sense of what's going to happen, what comes next. And there's a lot of people wondering that right now, wondering what's going to happen. And in moments like this, it seems much more challenging to have peace. I don't know about you, but maybe you've sensed just a little bit less peace in your overall experience because of what's going on thousands of miles away that you realize could ripple into our lives right here. And for many of us, peace is something that is kind of an external thing. This is kind of how we view it. I'm going to put some scripture or some pictures up on the screen here that I realize for some of you may ruin your day, and I say that a little tongue-in-cheek because of what it looks like. Because you're not there, right? How many of you would say that looks peaceful to you? Yeah, a few. Most of you that raised your hands are probably folks that love the mountains. Well, how about this? There, some more of you. It's like, take me to the ocean. This is where you feel most at peace. It's a specific location. It's an overall experience that you have when you are in a space like this. And for many of us, there are memories that are attached to places like this in our lives where we had this overwhelming sense of peace. And again, it's an external thing that reverberates internally. Here's one that's actually along the Mediterranean coast, for those of you that may prefer that. And then one more maybe just a little closer to home. It's just right here on the Pacific Ocean. Wherever it is, there is usually some place where we feel at peace. And we end up viewing peace as something that we can have when the external situations are right. Peace becomes tied to external circumstances. And that sets us up to live without peace most of the time. The word in the Hebrew language, in the Hebrew scriptures for peace, is the word shalom. How many of you have heard that word before? Yeah, most of us have heard that. There is a phrase that the Jews will use on Saturdays, and it is Shabbat Shalom, Sabbath peace. And this is a greeting as well as an expression of what Sabbath is meant to be, a situation that is meant to bring peace into us. It is a time in which we can enter in more fully even to peace. Shalom. It's a greeting that people share with each other on the street as an expression of a desire for peace. And this word, it carries with it the connotations of completeness, soundness, and one of my favorites, well-being. I'm not going to ask how many of you today feel that you have well-being inside of you at the moment, but that is something that we desire, that we long for, to feel well. And I don't just mean physically. Shalom is something that does deal with the physical aspect of human life, but even more so, it centers on the spiritual part of us as human beings. That longing inside of us for something more, to be connected to something that is larger than ourselves, to be caught up into something bigger. And we understand that spiritual longing as something that was given to us by God, that is actually a longing for Him and for life as He intended it to be. Our feelings are wrapped up in our spirituality. Things like sadness and joy and gladness and a lot of the feelings that come with that. But again, for many of us, peace is something that is often tied to external circumstances. And that means we don't experience it that often. What kind of things is peace often tied to? When the bank account is full, I will be at peace. When my job is not only stable, but it's one that I really enjoy, then I'll be at peace. When the economy is going well and the stock market keeps going up, I will be at peace. When the government, let's put it this way, when the right aspect of government is in power, I will be at peace, whatever right means in that instance. And when the government is making decisions that I feel are right, I'll be at peace. When there is no war, I will be at peace. And we could go on with a long list of these things, right? Like when the kids are not sick, when they're getting good grades in school, when they're turning out as we had hoped and expected that they would turn out, then I will be at peace. And you can add whatever you want in there, but usually peace ends up being tied to external things. And so peace is something that's kind of set aside until everything aligns. Now, I haven't lived nearly as long as some folks have, but I've lived plenty long to realize that most of those things don't all align at the same time. Have you? There are short windows in life where things kind of seem to just really align well and help us experience more peace. But the majority of life is not one in which everything is always working just how we hope it would. And if your life has been lived like that, please come and talk to me. Outer peace is lacking. How can I have that? Let's look at some of the ways that we try to get there. Some of the solutions that we come up with. Some of the ways that we try to make this work. First one, we deceive ourselves. What do I mean by that? This is what's called pseudo-peace. That word pseudo simply means false. So false peace or pseudo-peace. What is self-deception related to this? Have you ever had this sense inside of you that something may just not be okay, and you really don't like that feeling, and so you just tell yourself, oh, you know what? Everything's going to be just fine. And then life happens, and it's not just fine. Have you ever been in a situation where you don't necessarily like something that you're hearing, and so you go and talk only to the people who tell you what you want to hear? Just tell me whatever it is that will make me feel good at the moment, because I really just want to feel good at the moment. Doesn't matter if it's true. Doesn't matter if it's real. Just tell me what I want to hear. A lot of people live life that way. And that gives them a pseudo-peace that falls apart in the instant that something bad happens. It vanishes, it evaporates, right? One of the things you'll notice if you read through the Old Testament is that in the nation of Israel, at certain junctures in time, there were leaders who wanted prophets who would only tell them good news. Don't tell us anything else except good news. Just tell us what we want to hear, because we really don't want to deal with any of the other stuff. Basically, just lie to us because it'll make us feel better for a while. And we have a tendency to do this to ourselves sometimes. We lie to ourselves. And that does not produce peace. Jeremiah 6:14, you'll find this exact same sentence in Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 11. They say, peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. Just tell us what we want to hear, even if it's not true, even if it's not actually going to produce lasting internal peace. So that's one of the ways that we try this. Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 16, and this is alluding to something that I just mentioned. This is a quotation. Those prophets of Israel who prophesied to Jerusalem and saw visions of peace for her when there was no peace, declares the sovereign Lord. They were just lying because that's what they got paid to do. Lying to ourselves is not a good way to experience lasting peace. And surrounding ourselves with people who lie to us is also not a good way to have lasting peace. Second one, self-reliance. Now, I put the word money up here, and I want to clarify what I mean by that, lest you should think that I think that money is evil. I don't. And I also want to clarify the fact that we live in a society in which it is important to prepare for retirement. And if you're not doing that, you better start. Okay? So you've heard me say that. That's extremely important. Self-reliance is when we think that if we can just get enough money, we will be able to have peace for the rest of our lives. If we can just have enough dollars, whether that's in our bank account or our brokerage account or our 401k, we will have total security and nothing bad will be able to happen to us because we can buy our way out of it. And there are plenty of people who seek for peace in this way. Now, I recognize the fact that if you're hungry and you don't have any money, what do you need, usually? You need some food or you need some money to buy it, right? So money is a really important thing. The problem is when we put all of our trust in this thing that is uncertain. But we try, don't we? The Bible speaks a little bit about this. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 28. Those who emphasis on trust in. Those who trust in their riches, it does not say those who have. There's nothing wrong with having wealth. But trusting in it is not a way to find peace. Those who trust in their riches will fall. But the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. Is an expression that you probably haven't heard much of. So the righteous, basically the difference between the righteous and the other group of people is not necessarily how much is in their bank account, it's where their trust is. Do you notice the difference? And because of that, they continue to thrive, regardless of the circumstances. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, Paul is writing to Timothy some instructions for people within the church. And he says, command those who are rich in this present world, that is code word for folks that have means, not to be arrogant, nor to put their what? Hope. He doesn't say it's wrong for them to have it. He's talking about where their trust is. Nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so, and I love the way he says this next word, so uncertain. It's so uncertain. But to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So where we put our trust has a big impact to experience lasting, real peace. Misplaced trust. Now, I've put the word government up here, and I want to clarify that. I do not believe that having a government is a bad thing. And I want to make that very clear. That doesn't mean that I always agree with everything that the government chooses to do. And I doubt that there are very many of us who do. That's why there's two sides to the whole political thing, right? The challenge is when we say, well, if I can't trust in myself, if I can't trust in money, and the reason for that is, let me just back up for a second. I want to share this. Can money buy your way out of a car accident? Can money save you in the ICU? No. Can money save your child from a disease for which there is no cure? No. So when the writers of the Scriptures talk about putting our hope in God, that's not just pious talk. Because the smartest thing to do is to not put our hope in something that is fleeting, that actually can't always help. And that's why putting our hope in God is so important. So misplaced trust. If we can't trust in ourselves, if we can't trust in our resources, if we really don't want to lie to ourselves and just walk around as if everything's okay when it's not, oftentimes what we will do is we will try to put our trust in someone or some other institution. And some people, then I will just trust that the government will totally take care of me, 100%. Now, I do believe that the role of government is actually pretty simple. And I am not a politician, and I really don't like politics at all. I don't even really read much about it because it's just not something which my mind does well processing. But I'm really glad that there are people who think about these things a lot. Because imagine a world if everyone just did what was right in their own eyes. The book of Judges talks about that, and it was a disaster. I think that the role of government is actually really simple. The role of government is to provide an environment in which people can go and plant a garden in their backyard and enjoy it. The role of government is to provide an environment where friends can get together and enjoy time together. It's where people can get together and play music. It's where people can enjoy living life. So the role of government is really to help provide that type of an atmosphere. The question is, can they do that 100% of the time? Can they guarantee that nothing bad will ever happen to me or to you? No. Now we have law enforcement, we have armies, we have all these things that are there to try and prop up and protect civilization, rightfully so. But if we put all of our trust in an institution to do everything for us and protect us 100% of the time and give us peace, I have to tell you, you're going to be disappointed, and so am I. Because it can't. As important as it is, it can't. And so when we begin to realize this, some trust in chariots, Psalm 20, verse 7, and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. When we begin to realize this, we realize there is really only one place to put our trust if we want to experience lasting, real peace. And that is in God, who is the source of peace. Scriptures call God the Prince of Peace, and we usually use that phrase around Christmas time. Jeremiah 17, verse 7, he says, "Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him." Blessed is that word. So if this is the experience that you were having where you were placing your trust in God, the writer Jeremiah is saying, blessed are you, favored are you. There is going to be an internal experience that you cannot have unless you are placing your trust in God. And that internal experience is the one that leads to peace. Jeremiah 17, verse 8, this group of people, they will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. Now notice circumstances, external circumstances in this text and how the plant responds to external circumstances that are not favorable. It does not fear when heat comes. I don't know about you, but if you're planting something and it doesn't have water and heat comes, you know what happens to it, right? It dies. I just had a little cutting of mint on our counter, and it's in a little lid to a jar, and I keep putting water in there each day, and it was sprouting, and I forgot about it for a day. You know what happened to it? Shriveled up. Yeah. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. Now, those are some pretty challenging external circumstances that you would think should just shrivel up the plant and it would die. But because of who planted it and who takes care of it and who provides for it, external circumstances are what they are, but the plant still grows. And this is an analogy, if you will, of what God's trying to say to you and me as we're searching for peace in this world. There's only one place to truly find lasting peace: in God. And maybe David said it best. This is from Psalm 23, and I'm going to read the entire psalm in a translation that maybe some of us are not quite as familiar with if you grew up with the King James quoting Psalm 23. But I really like this version, the New International Version for Psalm 23. Because I'll be honest with you, I used to read Psalm 23 as a kid, and there were parts of it that I completely did not understand. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and see if you're anything like me, but some of these translations today I find help me understand this even better. This is one of them. David, who was a shepherd of sheep, penned these words, and he said this: "The Lord is my shepherd." What does that make David? Sheep. What does that also make David in the sense it makes him dependent, right? There is a dependence. The shepherd is needed to guide and to protect. The Lord is my shepherd, he says. And as a result of this, I lack nothing. Why? Because God is my shepherd. He takes care of me. If I don't lack anything, what is that leading me towards? Peace. He makes me to lie down in burned up, overeaten pastures of grass, right? No. He makes me to lie down in green pastures with things that actually sustain my soul, that feed me truly. He leads me beside quiet waters, because for sheep, if the water's too noisy, they don't want to go drink there. So he leads me beside still or quiet waters where I can go and drink freely without fear. He refreshes my soul. Do you realize where the emphasis of all of this is? He. It's on him. It's on what he's doing for me as the sheep. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. He helps me find the right way to go so that I don't fall off in a ditch on the right or fall off in a ditch on the left and get stuck. He's shepherding me along the right paths that lead to life. Verse 4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, most of us grew up with this, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the darkest valley, say these next words with me: I will fear no evil. Why? For you are with me. Not dependent on external circumstances. Even the darkest valley, I can walk through without fear because He is with me. He says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me because I know that you're there to protect me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I didn't understand this as a kid. I just said it. I just quoted it because that's what we were supposed to do when we were little. The idea of preparing a table before me in the presence of my enemies. My enemies are watching, and I have a banquet set before me by God, and there's not a thing they can do about it. Wow. Rich language. He says, you anoint my head with oil, a favored place, a favored position to be in. And my cup is not half empty. My cup overflows because God continues to fill it up. He finishes, says, "Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Do you sense the trust that David has in God? Do you sense the dependence that he does not view as a bad thing? The dependence on the goodness of God that produces peace in his soul. So we've seen this reality, but how does this really work? What does this really look like? Come back next week. We'll explore that. Let's pray. Father in heaven, as we've paused in this place and we have listened to your word being read, we've thought and we've felt, we realize that for some of us, we desire a greater experience of peace, one that is not dependent on external circumstances. And God, we have caught sight today, maybe for the first time, maybe again, that there is a peace that you are longing to give to us that can survive the storm. A peace that is not transitory. That does not mean we won't ever feel things, but in spite of what we feel, that we can still have peace in you. God, we long for this. We long to experience more of this. And so God, help us to place our trust not in the things that will disappoint and fail us, but ultimately place our trust in you. And as we continue on this month to explore more of this idea, lead us more deeply to your heart and to the peace you are giving. And then let us share this with others that we meet. This is our prayer in Christ's name.